The first thing we do in Swimlane is we create an asset, and the asset basically contains the connection details to the server. So we have the host here and the API token possible, verify SSL if you have certificates installed, and a basic test connection. And so then the test connection is run, and that's the first thing basically to make sure that everything's all connected correctly. So then over here we have our application records, and this is an application record that I've put together, and it contains a bunch of fields. And the first button integration that we're going to be running is this get all detections. So if we run this get all detections, and we get it a couple of seconds, we can then see that it has now populated our records with a bunch of different detections, and it now has data from the detection name, detection type, timestamps, all sorts of different fields that we gather from the API. If we're looking to grab a specific detection, we can use it by ID. So we can grab detection ID number 7 and grab this detection. Give it a couple seconds, and it has now filled out this form with detection ID number 7's details. We also implement with triage rules over here. So we can run this get triage rule task. And this get triage rules task populates this other application record over here called the triage rules table. And this one only has one entry, and we can scroll down and find the ID. So this is ID 25. So over here in our Vectra box, we have our triage filters, and this is our expected scanner behavior triage rule with these conditions right here. So if we wanted to update this triage rule, we could go back to our original records, go over to our triage rules, and put in our triage ID. And now we can update our IPs that we want to have in the triage list. And they're just comma separated. And we can also do DNS records. And there's a multitude of other different things that you can add. So we run the record, and we save it. And then we can come over here to our triage filters, and if everything's been running correctly, it looks like something failed. Let's see. Start over. We can see that the update has been successful as this output key. And now I guess if we go over here and refresh our Vectra instance, we can see that the expected scanner behavior has added this internal IPs over here, which we can then modify. All of these tasks are configurable within Swimlane down here in our integrations under the Vectra application. So if we update our triage rule, we can check our configuration. We can update based on IPs, DNS host names, ports, or just hosts. And this is also how we map our outputs. We map the successful output key to the @field update successful. And so these are the basic use cases that the customer had requested, being able to update the triage rules, being able to grab the triage rule details, and also the detections based on ID or just all detections. This is obviously not your entire API, but it's, I don't know, I guess what we've got so far.
And so kind of our thought there was, you know, we had two customers that really requested this, and the use cases seem to be very similar. I believe both of those are kind of from the MSSP space, I guess. So it seems to make sense that that would be kind of the main use case that this would be set up for, you know, being able to pull down, of course, the wealth of information that you all provide via your detections, and being able to go back and actually take action through those triage rules, and you know, all of the other things, of course, that would be kind of hooked up to Swimlane in that environment.
It looks like Tom has a question. What about host scoring events versus just detection events? I'm not 100% sure since I haven't looked at the API in a little bit, but the host scoring event might be a different endpoint, which would be implementable through another task. So right now we only have I think it's 4 tasks. We have to get detection, get detections, get triage rules, and then update triage rules. We could create another task which would use a different endpoint on the API to get the host scoring event.
Yeah, I mean, so, Jitten and Jose and Fabian and everybody jump in, but like, my thought concept is that if, somebody is going to, want to be alerted that they've got an issue, it's not just individual detection scores, but it's, here's a particular, host that I would want to, be alerted to, and then I have multiple detections underneath that host, right? Versus just individual detection events, looking at them kind of, by themselves is not the only thing you'd want to do, right?
Yeah, that is true. I think in true sense, where how or the value of where Vectra would get used would be where you would want to trigger a certain set of actions based off your host score, which will have multiple detections attached to it. Tom, for the Arch use case, do you have any more context if they, because it's what I heard from Greg and Spencer is what they have today is based off the specific requirements that Arch in this case would have put in front of them. But I just want to know if you were aware of them wanting to have it be more of a host base, because to me that's the use case that would be the more natural one. Versus, yeah, you could take some actions based off just detection, but I don't think that would be the typical.
Yeah, I mean, the only detail that I have, can you still hear me? Sorry.
I can hear you.
Yeah, the only detail that I have was they had said a while back that quick wins for them from a store perspective would be, phishing automation, low-level incident handling of basic, AV alerts, basic IDS alerts, automated escalation of incidents to generate alerts to their NOC or SOC, consolidated platform for case management, and better, reporting. So it seemed very high level and kind of generic. I don't know if they shared more detail with regards to specific desires as it related to Vectra with, Swimlane. But that's what I had from them, from when this whole thing started, right?
Got it. And Fabian, do we know that what we have with some of the other store vendors, do they leverage the host? I would imagine they would want to use the host.
We have, no, basically we tag something on detect UI, and the SOAR will grab that tag, specific tag, and trigger an action based on the tag we set.
Oh,
that's kind of what exists.
So in that sense, this is more comprehensive than that, because they're pulling in all detections, albeit at a more granular level. It would.
The detection does have an associated host IDs. Since I only have one host, there's only one host ID. So we can gather host information from there. But adding additional tasks is fairly trivial, since now we have the base API, configured in this plugin. So adding additional endpoints to get, add host functionality is something that we could definitely do. Just the base requirements that we got from the customer and from our sales engineers was just these detections and triage reports.
Well, right. And so, like, if you have all of these detections in, can you, see, okay, what other detections are also on this host, because you are pulling in the host ID? Is that already there?
That's something that we could implement later. So we can key off of an output and say, okay, so when we get this output key from this detection, we can then kick off another task, and a task like that could be look up host by ID and get details about the host. And then we can, then create different tables and records, linking them all together with these different keys based on maybe like the host ID and all the different detections associated with them.
A very common ask that, customers generally have is, I want to take some kind of action against the host once I determine that, I think it's in trouble, right? So is that, implementing a NAC rule, at some, NAC enforcement point, right? Implementing some sort of isolation. Is it, blocking communications, right? Any number of different actual, response actions that they may want to do that would be associated with a host, not necessarily just an individual detection, right?
Yeah, and so once we have the host information, we can then use the Swimlane integration service to connect with other plugins, such as maybe like a firewall, which could isolate the host or create firewall rules blocking different maybe ports or even like types of connections or protocols, and essentially do the isolation through the information gained from Vectra.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if this is doing what Arch wants, great, right? But I'm kind of looking to Fabian and the rest of the guys for their expertise as it relates to a larger, need, right?
I'm with you, Tom. And Spencer, maybe I'll take 2 minutes, just a little bit, maybe tied to I don't know if you've had a chance to see the Vectra product and demo, but the best way to think about it is when we do kind of these network-based threat detections, we do it at the host level. But when you look at our UI, the host that starts showing up as critical hosts to kind of, for the SOC analyst to double click on and look at more closely, that's based off a host who is exhibiting a sequence or a series of bad behavior, which is essentially a series of detections that have been triggered. So, for example, a host establishes a hidden tunnel, or try to do a remote desktop and then do a hidden tunnel, and then does a port scan or a port sweep, and then ultimately does something which triggers one of our recon algorithms. Now, it's a series of detections that the host has triggered, which is why that host will start showing up in the more critical quadrant. And then a SOC analyst, the workflow would be, they would then want to say, you know what, if a host starts showing this high risk score, then go take certain action. So by definition, it would be a host with a high risk score will have multiple detections, versus saying, you know what, I see a hidden tunnel, or I see a remote desktop connection to the detection, go take some action. So I think that's what's triggering Tom's comment, and I think it would be worthwhile if it's, like you were saying, if it's trivial to create an action based off a host's detection or a host's a certain score, then we should do that.
All right, that sounds like a good plan. Since obviously this use case was just to, prove that we could do something like that. I see I brought up your API docs here. I implemented the /detections endpoint, and there's like a hosts one that we could use to grab that information as well, and that would definitely create a much more solid use case.
Which version of the API document do you have? Because we did update in 5.0 some of the API stuff, which was just only within the last month, right? So Jose and Fabian, I'm not sure if you can kind of talk about some of the changes there.
Yeah, thanks. Good call, Tom. Yeah, we in 5.0, which was just this last month, we implemented a 2.1 API. We revamped our triage backend, as well as introduced accounts as first-class citizens. So now we have an account-based view of detection. So there's a 2.1 guide. All the 2.0 functionality is carried over into 2.1. So you can talk to the new API without any changes. However, if you want to take advantage of accounts and the new triage engine, which has the big thing with the triage engine is it's got Boolean logic, so you can sort of daisy chain triage rules together. But I can send you a copy of that if you don't have one. It looks like you've got an older version, the 2.0 version.
Yeah, I do have an older version of the API doc. Do you know that even if you do send me the new document, do you know if our Vectra box will need to be upgraded or something?
It should already be upgraded if it's connected to the internet.
Does it automatically
in your resources
update?
tab? Yeah, in your resources
is that it right
tab,
there in that tab next to your?
Like, are you in it to your left, like one tab from where you are now?
Oh, this?
Yeah, so go to resources. And then if you scroll down, you have REST API guide.
Yeah, this is a new one. That's the new one.
Oh, wow, look at that. All right, well, thank you. That was really easy.
There was, there's also like release notes, for new functionality and stuff, but
I can send you those because you'll have to have an account on the support portal, which I'm guessing you probably don't. So yeah, if you click on that same page, if you just scroll up, Yeah, that's just scroll up to the top of that page. And then if you click view release notes, it'll actually send you to our support portal where you'll have to log in. We're getting ready to release 5.1 on Thursday. So I'll just email you a copy of the 5.1 release.
Yeah, because I mean, if we have a list of use cases, I can totally create all the tasks associated with that and then include that in our in an upgraded version of the bundle.
Could you send them 5.0 also? Because that was kind of a major milestone, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So kind of tactically speaking, also because I think I'm going to lose Kevin Shu here in a second. As far as the joint solution brief is concerned, I think one of the things we would be wanting to get, Kevin, is I don't know if it is from the demo, but based off the demo, maybe get a couple of screenshots that we can incorporate in the solution brief.
Yeah.
And I think to at least get a use case which is in line with the demo, we would want to do kind of that host-based trigger for the action. So kind of getting that data of the host base. I think those, if we can hit kind of that host-based thing, then that would be a good point for us to also figure out, Fabian, if we can have a similar demo set up on our end.
Tag-based or host-based. I mean, based on the score, that would be the most common thing, I would say.
Spencer and Greg, do you guys have like a kind of a virtual instance, an FR instance that we can have installed on our end, if with the plugin, if we need to incorporate this in our demo environments?
Yeah, I believe we do. I think Greg might be able to tell you more about that.
Yeah, we definitely do have NFR. We've just actually stood that up. I believe it was back at the end of May. Happy to work with you guys on that. It's actually me that can cut that license for you. We've made it honestly as easy as we possibly could. It's just an OVA link that we send over, of course, a license with a couple of seats. And really from there, a couple of quick start guides will get you all started.
Awesome. If you can send that our way, and I guess this plugin, when it has that kind of host space section, then maybe from there on it may require one meeting with Fabian and you so that we get it set up the right way. But I think first step is getting this demo to that point where we have that host-based thing, and then if you share that with us, we would love to replicate it on our end.
I think that sounds great. So looking really at adding, of course, the API call for the host info, looking more at a use case that can kind of use that info to trigger an action or to trigger, some next steps. But really, other than that, anything else you guys really saw in here that you thought needed to be added to this integration, or we pretty okay from there?
Fabian, Jose, Tom, any thoughts, Kevin, anything?
Looks good for me. I joined a few minutes late, but from what I saw, no, that looks good.
I mean, essentially what I've seen with Phantom and Demisto was you put a tag on something and then it picks up on that tag and you can execute a playbook, right?
Actually, the one thing I maybe related to that, what Tom is more from my own curiosity. How are playbooks or COAs built out in Swimlane? So once you have, take your detection of choice, how is the subsequent action or decision making laid out? Is there like a COA builder or some sort of builder, or is it more like script based afterwards?
Really kind of the way that we run playbooks, and I know that it's a bit of a differentiation between us, Phantom and Demisto there. From what I understand, of course, I'm not a user of those products, but I understand that the playbooks from them are really more set up in a fashion of, if you have product X, product Y, and product Z, you put those all together and we can run this playbook. Ours is a bit more of a custom approach to that. I will say I'm happy to kind of send over a couple of screenshots as well on what those look like, but really for us, it's a series of if statements and conditions. We kind of start out with one box and ask, hey, is this hitting a threshold of some sort? If the answer is yes, you take the next chain and go on about a series of actions. Really, we thought that was kind of a better approach because it did not require our customers to have specific products, and really gave us the ability to kind of give them the Lego blocks, if you will, and let them kind of dictate, how do you want this workflow to go? What do you think should happen when? Let us help you configure it and tell us exactly how you want it to work.
The configuration for the workflow can be done with these tasks. So right here we have the different detection tasks and some other tasks that are already installed in this machine. And as you create the tasks, you can link them to different applications, which are obviously where the view comes in. And the configuration can be linked through outputs or through triggers, and these triggers can be added scheduled email or on record save, as well as at the end, as soon as like a new record comes in, say a record comes in on this board, which is the triage rules, say a new triage rule shows up on this board, we can then say that, okay, we want to set off a whole new set of tasks using information from these records, and you can then key off of that. We could set up some sort of workflow, but I don't have that ready today.
Got it. Makes sense. Yeah, that's a lot.
I'm not clear how the triage rule updating works here, right? So are you building a new triage rule for Vectra in Swimlane as a result of Arch looking at events coming in and they said, I want to build a triage rule for this?
That's essentially what it sounds like they wanted to do. They wanted to take a triage rule given an ID and be able to populate it with data, and then
they're just really asking to update existing rules, not create new ones.
That was the ask, but creating is also possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would get relatively complicated pretty quickly though, because we do have this enhanced capability in 5.0 or in 5.1, I should say, right? Well, 5.0. Versus updating something that's there, that's relatively straightforward, right?